Hey everyone, this is Liz of Vets Family Farm Horsemanship, and today I just thought I'd take the opportunity to talk a little bit about what am I looking for when I go to an equine facility. I just had the opportunity to go and visit a facility, might have the chance to utilize some of their stalls in their arena from my horse training clients. But this is a topic that comes up a lot, whether you're a single horse owner, recreational rider, equine professional, is how do you go about evaluating to see if a facility is going to be a good match for you? And there's a process that I use from the time that I arrive on property to figure out, is it going to be a place where I'm going to feel comfortable having clients, having horses, whether it's for a short time or whether I'm going to be boarding there, utilizing that space for a long time to come. So from the moment I arrive, first thing I'm looking at is this property accessible? Can you find it? Can you access it? Does it have good infrastructure to reach it? Like, are the roads decent? Are there a bunch of overhanging trees that are going to keep me from bringing a horse trailer in? Is it easy to navigate? Do they have enough space for parking? If I'm going to be bringing in clients, or even if you just have family visiting that you want to come and see your horse or ride your horse, is there going to be parking space for that? Is the road in a good condition? Are there a ton of really deep ruts, or is there some safety hazard that you're not going to be able to get your vehicle or your trailer in and out of there? So that's the first thing I look at. The second thing I look at is just overall facility structure. Do the buildings look like they're in good repair? Do the fences look like they're in good repair? Is it taken care of? Now, horses are really hard on a facility. They're hard on pastures. They're hard on fencing. They're really hard on buildings. Both, the things that they do, kicking and chewing and etc. But then also just urine and poop, like that in and of itself is gonna put some wear and tear on the facilities. So is that stuff being managed and disposed of, or does it just look really run down? Are there safety issues? Are there rusty nails sticking out of things? Are there broken boards everywhere? And I know that it's a constant process. Your farm is never as quite as good as you'd like it to be. There's always a longer list of projects than there are hours in the day. But are they making a good effort to keep that facility looking nice, looking safe? For me, I want to present a very professional front to my clients. So it's important to me that it looks like a professional space, that when clients show up, they believe that this is a place that's going to take good care of their horse and that it's good value for the money that they're spending, because they're spending money for this service. As a trainer, I'm there to solve problems and help my clients. So I want to make sure that they're in a space that they feel is going to be a good fit, and that they can send their equines without having to worry about whether or not there are safety concerns there. So that brings me on to my next topic of fences, right? So I have worked at places with every type of fence imaginable. Everything from welded pipe, high tensile wire, barbed wire, board fencing, electric fencing, vinyl fencing, the newer models of polymer type fencing. I've seen it all, and I just want to say there's no such thing as horse-proof or horse-safe fencing. All right, there's safer and less safe, and everybody has different opinions on this based on their personal experience. Some people love pipe fencing. Some people don't. Some people really like, what we call the full safe, like woven wire fencing. Some people are worried about their horse getting a shoe caught on that. But in general, there's a couple things that I personally like to see. Regardless of the fencing type, I like to see an electric wire incorporated in some way, or some type of electric fencing, whether it's tape, rope wire, etc. I like to see that incorporated, and I'll tell you why. Because if you don't, no matter what type of fencing you have, your horse is going to be leaning on that, putting pressure on that. You know, if it's wood, some of them are probably going to chew on that. And it just helps them to understand that boundary of the fence better than if it wasn't there. So I like to see some incorporation of electric. On that though, I don't like it to be solely dependent on electric, because when the power goes out, I've had situations where people are chasing their horses, you know, down the road a mile or more because the power went out and the horse tested the fence and they went right through it because there was no physical barrier there. Electric fencing is not a physical barrier, it's a mental one. So I like it to be a combination of both. And then things I don't like, I don't like barbed wire. I know that there are people who utilize barbed wire that have very large properties or have mixed herds with cattle and things like that. I respect that. Everyone has to make their personal choice. I've known people who have kept their horses on barbed wire for their whole life and they haven't had any issues. Unfortunately, that hasn't been my experience. So I'm not a fan of barbed wire. I don't like keeping my horses on properties that have that. Another type of fencing I'm really leery of, unless it incorporates electric, and even so, is the high tensile wire. Because of my personal experience. I was working at a facility that had high tensile wire. One of their horses laid down next to it, went to get back up, and pretty much hamstringed themselves on the high tensile wire, and it was incredibly sad. Everybody had thought that fencing was a very safe option. Again, there's no such thing as horse safe fencing. This was by no means negligence on their part. It was just a really unfortunate accident. But because I've seen that, I don't personally like high tensile fencing. It's something that I'm very cautious of. So, checking out the fencing, making sure it's in good repair, making sure that it's a type of fencing that I personally feel comfortable with. And that's going to differ for everybody, depending on what your personal experience is. You leave a horse inside any fence, no matter how safe you think it is, long enough, eventually you're going to see one get injured with it, and that may change your mind on whether or not you're comfortable with that type of fence. So other things I'm looking at, right? What kind of training space is available? Is there an arena? If there's an arena, is it covered, indoor, outdoor? What's the footing like? Footing is really important to me, especially because that's going to help minimize injury to my horses over time if it's got good footing. Is there something like a round pen? I do a lot of foundation work and a lot of colt starting, so a round pen is a really useful tool for me. Not necessarily one that I use every single day, but I do use it quite a bit in those first few weeks to months of a horse's life. Just a really useful tool. So that's something I look for as well. Is there a round pen, or at least like a small square pen or a smaller arena, something that's going to help me when working with that very impulsive, very forward horse, to help manage that impulsion a little bit, so that I'm not constantly having to utilize aids to manage it. Because the more I can leave that horse alone and the less pressure I have to put on them, the better experience we're going to have. So large space for horses that are more whoa than go, so I don't have to put so much pressure to get them going. Small training space for really green or really squirrely horses to help manage that impulsion. Other amenities, right? Is there a place for me to wash the horse? Is it a wash rack? Is it outdoors? Are there stalls? Do those stalls seem safe? Again, are they in good repair? Is there a space for me to keep tack? Is there a space for me to park my trailer? If I'm parking my trailer, do I have to pay an extra fee to park that trailer? Those are things I'm thinking about. Pastures. Do the pastures look like they're being well managed? I'm going to preface this with saying that horses are some of just the absolute toughest animals to manage on pasture. Unlike many other grazers, horses have a full set of both upper and lower incisors. So they can get that grass all the way down to the ground. And so that's a challenge. Also, because of their hoof structure and just their general size and weight, they can put a lot of damage on your land. Very few people are fortunate enough to have enough space that they can keep their horses on pasture 24/7 without damaging the land. If you're one of those individuals, I congratulate you. That is a wonderful resource to have. We all know, I think at this stage, that the more turnout time a horse has, the more that they're able to engage in those grazing behaviors, the fewer health issues in general you're going to see. Things like ulcers, suspensory injuries, stiffness, all that stuff. You're going to see a reduction in that if your horse gets a lot of turnout time. But again, you have to have a lot of land in order to manage that. And it also, a factor is how productive is that land. I'm not an equine nutritionist. Strongly recommend that if you want more information about that kind of thing, pasture management, nutrition from the pasture, that you reach out to your state agricultural extension, as well as engage the service of a good equine nutritionist. If you want more education on what kind of nutrition is your horse able to get from the pasture that you have available. But most places are either going to have to put their horses out part-time and keep them in a stall part-time. They're going to have to employ some kind of rotational grazing system. And when the grass goes dormant, depending on whether you've got more of a cool season or warm season grass pattern, you're probably going to have an area for turnout that is not a nice looking pastures. You know, some people call it like a sacrifice area, where you're turning the horses out and they're staying on it to the extent that the grass gets eaten down. And there's ways to manage that, but that's one of those two scenarios is more likely. Either they're being turned out part-time, or they're spending part of their time outside but in a sacrifice area of some kind. But do the pastures look like an effort is being made? Are they really eroded? Is it covered in noxious plants? I am looking for things like toxic plants. If there are toxic plants out in the pasture and nothing is being done about it, that's a big red flag to me, because that tells me that either whoever's running the facility doesn't know that that's toxic, or doesn't have a plan to deal with it. So that's something that I'm looking for. If the pasture's just got, some weeds, there's some weeds that do have some nutritive value. One of the ones that comes to mind a lot in the Midwest especially is chicory. Chicory does have, some nutritive value. So just because you've got, some chicory or some plantain or some pigweed out in your pasture does not automatically mean that you can't put your horse out there. But it is something to be aware of. You want to be observing what kind of forage is out there, and definitely be aware of any, very toxic plants, especially those that are toxic in small amounts. Another thing that I'm thinking about is observing the horses that are there. Do the horses look well cared for? Do they look like they're well fed? Some horses are harder keepers than others. Particularly as horses age, they don't necessarily continue to carry the same muscle mass. They don't necessarily carry that fatty adipose tissue in the same places. But in general, if all the horses at that facility are looking like they're hard keepers, it's probably an issue with the overall system. And I don't want my horse to be looking like it's a hard keeper in a couple months after moving them there. So that's something that I'm keeping in mind, is do the horses in general look well cared for? Are they getting, groomed? Are they getting fed? Are their feet all, in super rough shape, or does it look like they're getting maintenance regularly? These are all things that I'm paying attention to. Another thing, of course, is meeting with the people. Does it seem like it's a fit for you and what you're doing? There's all kinds of different facilities that meet different needs. Places that focus on lessons, places that focus on training, places that target the recreational rider or the family rider or children, places that target more of the performance world. And I do think it's really helpful, depending on what your goals are, to be nested in a facility of like-minded people, because you're going to get more out of that experience. You're going to look forward to going to the barn. You're going to look forward to interacting with people there if it is a group of like-minded individuals. Now, that doesn't mean everybody has to be at the same level. Everybody comes with their own experiences and education levels, and it's good not to exist in a complete bubble where you have the opportunity for growth because you have other people there who maybe have knowledge that you don't. But at the same time, if your focus is to perform at a really high level of cutting, it wouldn't necessarily make a lot of sense to be at a facility that just focuses on teaching walk trot lessons for kids, or a facility that is mostly people interested in trail riding on the weekends. That's not to say it couldn't work. It absolutely could. You know, it's all situation dependent. But in general, it's helpful to be at a facility that can support what your goals are. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Do people seem friendly and supportive? I think we've all seen those situations where there's a little bit of maybe drama at the barn, and that can make what should be a really enjoyable experience into something that's less so. So I would definitely, me personally, I'm feeling that out. Does it seem like the kind of place where people are supportive of each other, understanding that we all have our differences, we all have our preferred methods, but in general, is it a support group of supportive individuals, or is it a group of that's always looking for the negative? That's something that I personally try to avoid in my life, and especially in my horse time. We always want more time with horses if you're bit by the horse bug, right? So that time is really valuable to me, and I want to make sure that I'm spending it with a group of individuals who are gonna make that experience more enjoyable and supportive. That's important when I'm looking at a barn. Other than that, it really all comes down to personal preference. But that's the main things that I'm looking for when I go to check out an equestrian facility. All right, so if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Help grow the channel. I'm really trying to spread the knowledge that I have gained over the last 20 plus years of working with horses. I'm also continually learning, and so please keep comments, you know, as positive as we can, so people understand that the equestrian community can be a great place for support and growth, and not a place where we're tearing each other down. I think that is something that we all could try to foster a better community of supportive equestrians. That's definitely one of the goals here at Vet Family Farms, and I hope that that's something that you're finding in your life as well.